Sam Levitt's coverage of Padres baseball is brought to you by David P. Shapiro, criminal defense attorneys helping good people regain control of their future when charged with a crime since 2010. Visit davidpshapirolaw.com. He joins us on the SDCCU fan hotline. It's not big bank banking, it's better. Sam, hopefully I think we figured this out. What's going on? Is the weather out there in Peoria? What do we got going on a Thursday?
Yeah, we got to figure it out. I think I might have to get a new cable here, going a little in and out on the equipment, on the radio equipment here. But good day here in Peoria. Very nice weather. It is very, very warm. I cannot recall a stretch of time where it has been this warm, this early in spring in Peoria since I've been coming to spring training. And this is my fourth, but we've had a very hot week. It's getting high 80s, low 90s. So we're dealing with that, but aside from that, everything is going pretty smoothly.
Yeah, well, it's hot out here, so no surprise. It's a little bit of a heat wave out here in the southwest of the United States. All right, let's talk about some of the things that have been happening with Padres baseball over the last couple of days or so, and some topics that we have discussed around Padres baseball. One of them, to me, that I want to start with is and it was in the latest notes from Kevin Acee yesterday about the bullpen and the battle of the bullpen and the Padres having a plethora of arms, and not everybody's going to be able to make the team. And they're starting to get some phone calls about the bullpen from other teams. What's been the latest in terms of the bullpen battle? Because there's not too many spots available, and there's a lot of arms that are off to really good starts.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point. Look, the Padres have, I think, an embarrassment of riches as far as bullpen arms, and they've got guys in there who are very experienced and who certainly have spots locked up, and a very, very strong group. And then they have a group of guys that are battling for the final spot or two, and I'll get to why there might be an opportunity for somebody else to sneak in a moment. But you're right. I mean, whether you want to talk about guys like Alec Jacob or Bradley Rodriguez or Ron Marinaccio. I mean, the list goes on of guys that are coming up through the pipeline, like a Garrett Hawkins, like a Miguel Mendez, who's been more of a starter, but, could be somebody who's seen the bullpen at some point. We'll see. Look, they have a lot of guys that can throw the ball hard and are high octane arms in that bullpen. And obviously we know the big names that are already in there, the guys like Miller and Borjon and Estrada and Adam, if he's on the opening day roster. The latest update, though, on that is that Yuki Matsui is going to miss the World Baseball Classic, won't pitch for Team Japan, dealing with that left adductor strain that he suffered in the last week. And obviously that's unfortunate for Yuki, because pitching in the WBC is very, very meaningful for these guys, and he's not going to be able to do that. And his status for opening day, I think, is in question a little bit. Again, we're a month away, exactly a month from opening day, so who knows, maybe he is ready by then. But hypothetically, if Yuki's not ready for opening day, it would open up a spot for somebody else. And I think somebody like Ron Marinaccio, who is out of options, well, you could make the argument, might make it a little bit easier for him to sneak his way onto the roster if, say Yuki Matsui isn't ready, and now you have another spot open. And again, we don't know if Jason Adam is going to be ready for opening day. He's expressed that he wants to be, but I think it's still to be determined if that's going to be a reality for March 26th. So you look at the whole situation, and I think the good news is that they have a number of arms that are very capable, and, there are definitely going to be guys that are very well deserving and would be in a lot of major league bullpens on the outside looking in. But I do think with the Matsui news, depending on what happens with Jason Adam, you're looking at a scenario where maybe a guy or two sneaks onto that opening day roster that maybe otherwise would not have been there. But it's a good problem to have. Obviously, I think the idea of AJ Preller still here at spring training, dealing from a position of great strength where you actually have a lot of depth, is not a crazy idea. And I guess we'll see in the next month if AJ does something with one of those arms potentially. But if not, they've got a very, very strong group down there regardless.
Talking with Sam Levitt. He's live from Peoria, Arizona. We got a Padre game later on today, of course. Let's talk about the bench as well. I mean, there's a battle for the bench. I think the only thing that's really, I wouldn't say locked in, but a little bit more firm is the catching situation. And we knew that going into spring training, but that leaves relatively 3 spots open for the bench. I think a lot of people would assume, with the way that he has already hit left-handers, Miguel Andujar, will be part of that conversation. And then it leaves a couple extra spots. You got guys like Sung-Moon Song potentially playing for a spot. You got Bryce Johnson, who is a very you could really utilize him in the outfield as a fourth outfielder. He brings a lot of intangibles to this team. Ty France is a Gold Glove level first baseman that's getting a lot of repetition. So the bench battle is starting to get really interesting. But I tell you what, Sam, I mean, this might be one of the deeper bench that the Padres have had, just based on the players that they have competing for spots. There's going to be some tough decisions.
And I'll give you two names that you didn't even say that are 40-man guys who I think have a real shot to be on this team, and that's Will Wagner and Mason McCoy. I mean, those guys are already on the 40-man. Those guys may be a little bit redundant based on where they play, but, two guys that have experience at the major league level, and McCoy did a nice job yesterday, had a nice hit, had a nice play up the middle defensively. Padres know what they have in him, a guy who hopefully can give you a good glove and give you good enough at bats where, he could spot somebody here and there throughout the course of a season. So you're right. Whether you want to look at Song, who I certainly think is a great shot to be on this roster, or McCoy or Wagner. Jose Miranda's shown up and done a really nice job at the plate. Obviously, that's a guy who would have to, be put on the 40-man, and that's a big difference this time of year is guys that are on minor league deals versus guys that are already on the 40-man, and obviously those 40-man guys have some level of advantage, but they've got some guys playing well, and to your point, once you factor in, Andujar and Song and how the Padres can be malleable with this roster depending on the matchup. I mean, there, probably are going to be days where you have a guy in Gavin Sheets coming off the bench, a guy who can, be a big bopper in a pinch hit situation. Same thing with Castellanos. So I'm with you, Braden. I think the good thing is they have a lot of guys that are hitting well. They do have some optionality for these spots. And unlike the last couple of years at the start of the season, I do think you probably are looking at a scenario in 26 where you feel pretty good about this bench coming out of spring training. And I don't know that you necessarily felt that way in 24 and 25. It kind of got that way as the season went on and they signed guys and they made the trades they did. But I'm with you. I think you may look at this bench and see some good defensive optionality. Bryce Johnson, you mentioned him. I think he has a strong case to be that, kind of fourth outfielder type and somebody who they can plug in and has speed and is a switch hitter. So they're going to have some tough decisions to make even just on this 40-man roster, but they've got some good options. And I think the good news is some, potential power coming off the bench as well, which I think is really important.
The good news is some of those names you mentioned, including the 240-man guys, is they can go up and back. So that might be a numbers game a little bit more than anything else, where they're waiting in AAA for an injury potentially. Because, when I've thrown out in conversations, right, doing topics and stuff like that of, Ty France making the team, and then the question is like, well, who's going to back up Cronenworth at second? Well, if Cronenworth gets hurt, guess who's getting a call very quickly? Will Wagner, Mason McCoy, right? So I think it's more about preserving as many of the players as they can, and we know about those potential numbers. That leads into my next question here, and I think it's an interesting conversation about Sung-Moon Song and his obviously adjustment to MLB velocity, because they have him working on backfields right now, tracking 100-mile pitches. He's going to see a lot of it in spring training, and I don't know specifically in his contract, because some of the guys coming over from Korea and Japan have stipulations of you can't send me down to the minor leagues in order to sign. I don't know if he has that, but with the way that this has been playing out, is there a situation in which Sung-Moon Song might be getting more work maybe in the minor leagues to start the season or extended spring training? I don't know if any of those are that pliable, but is that a case for a guy like Sung-Moon Song to get him up to speed and in a way that I could keep Ty France in the organization if he plays well? Is that maybe something that's getting discussed?
Well, from what, from the brief research I've done on the Song contract, and I've got to confirm this, it appears he does not have minor league opt-out rights. Now, please don't quote me on that.
It's hard to find, and we're not going to know.
I don't know that for sure, but let's live in a world where he could be optioned down to the minor leagues. Yeah. I mean, it would give you more optionality in what you could do with other guys in the 40-man, and also could give him a little bit more time to catch up to major league pitching. But I totally could see a situation where, here at spring training and on the backfield, and he's going to get plenty of opportunities to play, especially with Manny and Bogart's out and these guys leaving for the WBC, I could totally see a situation where they come out of spring training saying he's ready to play, and defensively we can use him in different spots. So we'll see. But I think there's cases for McCoy and there's going to be a case for Wagner. And as far as I'll tell you, and I said his name, who I think really has just a great shot to make the team, Bryce Johnson, because you actually look at the 40-man and like fourth outfielder types, and it's like you kind of need him.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because then you got Andujar, who's played out there, but probably isn't great out there. You've got Castellanos, who, he said yesterday, if Tatis needs a blow, he can go out there, but it certainly doesn't seem like that's their plan. He's not working out there. I'll tell you that.
Well, the other thing
to me, like Bryce Johnson to me is like almost, I don't want to say a lock, but like pretty close.
To your point, I mean, like when you think about a fourth outfielder, Sam, what do you use a fourth outfielder for? Defensive replacement late,
defense,
right?
And
Nick
give somebody, give somebody a breather. Yeah,
they're not better defensively than your current outfield.
Correct. Yeah, I again, I don't want to say Johnson's a lock per se, but I think it's pretty close. Just you look in the room, and the fact that he's on the 40-man. So, and by the way, I think Bryce could be a very, very, and you might remember Bryce had some stretches where he was pretty productive offensively last year. So, to me, like, he's kind of earned the fourth outfielder spot, and I think could really be very good in that role too, to his credit. So you're right. The infield depth part of it, beyond Andujar, beyond Castellanos and Sheets, how they fit in day to day as far as the lineup based on matchups. I think that's where it's going to get, potentially interesting, because you've got Wagner, you've got Song, you've got McCoy. If somebody shows up here, let's just use a Jose Miranda, for example, and it's Cy France, like, yeah, could I see a world where those guys make it onto the roster because they show up and the Padres are like, we really like what they bring? Yeah. So going to be interesting. There's good competition, I would say, for, those final couple of bench spots for sure.
Yeah. Plus, as you mentioned, I think on Tuesday, he's got like over 100 MLB games with the Padres last year that you can go off of with Bryce Johnson. And that gets, it seems like, and that's how I would evaluate it as a coach. It's like, this stuff is extra. Let's see how he goes through some training and everything like that. But we know what he looks like in actual MLB games that matter. I think that gives a lot of guys the benefit of the doubt for slow starts in spring training.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking it up. I'm going to admit, for the first time this spring, what he actually did last year. I mean, again, it was 84 plate appearances, but he hit 342. He
did.
And he's got great speed. And if he gets on, he can steal a base, and he plays certainly good enough defense. So, yeah, to me, Bryce Johnson is going to be on this team. I think he probably should be. And then we go from there. But, yeah, I mean, he did good things last year. Kind of went under the radar, but it was very productive.
Yeah, he's got also the nod of, if you don't put him on the team, he ain't coming back. He's going to be somewhere else.
Correct.
For sure. So,
correct.
And that plays, that's a big factor for a lot of people that, think that it's just easy to try to, just send him down to AAA. That's not how it works for a lot of these players.
It's a major factor, the options part of it. And I guess this will, not that you asked about it, but it brings me into a different part of some of the news of the day, and that was Matt Waldron was back in the clubhouse today. He did play catch yesterday, so that's good. What his timetable is going to be as far as getting back on a mound and pitching in a game, I don't know yet. So how he's going to be impacted as far as the next month, and not only competing for a rotation spot, but also he's out of options, right? So that's a significant part of his situation. It's going to be interesting to see how long it takes him to get back, and then how they handle that. Is he going to be out long enough where you could put him on the IL, which I believe would allow you to delay that decision as far as the no options, and kind of kick the can down the road on that, from what I understand. So I don't know the answers to those questions yet and how long he's going to be out for. But, again, to your point, he's a good example of, like, there are things that go into these decisions when all is said and done at the end of spring training that are really beyond just the on-field performance, and things like being out of options, and how you can maximize the number of guys you can keep and maintain as much depth as possible, at least at the very start of the season. These are very, very important factors that go into all these decisions.
I think that leads into too of just what level of performance certain players have to do to overcome some of the numbers games that they don't qualify for. It's like, hey, look, yeah, he's doing really well in spring training, but is that good enough to basically cut two other players and not have him part of the org anymore? That's where these guys are going to have to make some of those decisions. One of the conversations that we had yesterday, and it's going to end our conversation with you as we started. It's about the bullpen. And the question is about, Bradley Rodriguez and the fact he's 22, he's young, he's controllable. Does that open the door, if he does really well, to a potential trade specifically for Estrada or Morgan that also fit his profile? And we get into the weeds and it's like, but they are all young and controllable. I know you got to give up something good to get something back, but what you're looking for is starting pitching, and I don't think you're going to be able to give up a bullpen piece for a starting pitcher in the future. And the other thing's first base. Is that really worth it when you can hang on to some of these players long term?
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what I think was said a little bit earlier today on the station, and it is the look. I understand that there is a group here, a position group here that has a ton of depth, and it's probably the only one right now, and that's the bullpen, like we discussed earlier in this segment. However, even though I understand that people out there are like, well, you could make a trade from that and fulfill a need. To me, there are two reasons why maybe you don't do it. And number one, you've got a really great bullpen. And I know what Jeremiah Estrada can do. I know what Adrian Morejon can do. I know what Jason Adam, Mason Miller, obviously. Heck, I even know what David Morgan looked like over the course of almost a full season. Look, Bradley Rodriguez, some of these younger guys that are on the way up. Bradley has got a ton of talent. Do we know if he's going to be able to get guys out consistently, outing after outing at the major league level? We don't. And that's not a knock on Bradley at all. He just hasn't been given the opportunity, and he will at some point. He certainly will at some point. So, yeah, I would be very, very, if it were me, and I'm not AJ, but I'd be very hesitant to at the start of the year deal from what I think could be a big reason why you win a lot of games, and that's the bullpen. And also, like, they've signed all these guys. They've got all the depth in this rotation, or at least options in this rotation, and kind of options as far as, first base and their lineup in DH and what they could do. I almost kind of want to see what you got at the start of the year and really see what your needs are. And you can address it as the season goes along or as you get towards the deadline. And hopefully at the very least, you're hanging around. So I don't know, to me, to move a guy, one of your big relievers, to fill a quote unquote need that you don't even really know how dire it is yet. And then also just assume that your high octane arms that are younger are just going to be able to replace those guys. I think those are a lot of pieces that got to fall into place to make it worth it right here, right now. And I just feel like this bullpen has the potential to be so good and such a big reason why right out of the gate they're winning games that personally I would kind of roll with them. But I'm not
in the mindset of, I can't trade from a super strength, but I will say this, Sam, what this team needs the most is still starting pitching.
Absolutely.
And you're absolutely and that right. Bullpen is not going to get you the starting pitching that you need, because the teams that need those pitchers, the Estradas and the Morgans and all that, those are teams that are competitive and they're trying to win a World Series. And those teams do not want to give up starting pitching arms for a bullpen arm. It doesn't match up.
And Braden, it's also not the time of year for it. I mean, I feel like we got a little, I don't know if spoiled is the right word, but at least it was a rarity where a guy like a Dylan Cease was moved right before the season started. I mean, those things don't typically happen. And obviously that was a very, very different situation where you're talking about what was kind of like a standard trade, big starting pitcher with multiple years of control. Here's a prospect package. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
Here. I mean, right. That's a trade that can kind of happen whenever, because it's a pretty standard trade. Right. And the Padres had the prospects to trade from. So, look, on one hand, the Padres have a lot of options as far as their rotation. How that quote unquote depth is going to play out once we get going is to be seen. And also, look, there are you're hoping Nick Pivetta can show up and be what he was last year. And I certainly think he can be. And I know they think he can be as well, but you got to see it. Joe's coming off the Tommy John, King's coming off, obviously, a lot of injuries in 2025. So, I think it's fair to say there are a lot of different factors that go into kind of what this rotation can be, even beyond what the back end looks like. So we're going to see. They could certainly use more. You can never have, like, there was some questions kind of in scrums, right when we started about, can you have too much? Now you have all these options. Can you have too many options for starting pitching? And I will, say to you very confidently, no, you cannot have too many options or too much starting pitching.
No,
Never.
you cannot. And
You cannot have too much pitching.
Nick Pivetta starts today. Sam, I know we got to cover some baseball here in a second, so let you go. Appreciate the conversation. Great conversation today about Padres baseball. Love the talk. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend. See ya.
Sam Levitt joining us on the SDCCU Fan Hotline. His coverage is brought to you by David P. Shapiro, Criminal Defense Attorneys. David P. Shapiro, Criminal Defense Attorneys, helping good people regain control of their future when charged with a crime since 2010. Visit davidpshapirolaw.com.